Previously on Dragon Ball Z.
There might be one or two more features added if we have time, but you know, that's it for the most part. So yeah, I just want to kind of set expectations here. This is a small update. There might be one or two more features added.
One or two more features.
One or two more features. Ooh, didn't see that one coming, did ya? You little shits. Hi everyone, welcome in. I'm Snoot. I'm one of the community managers for Coffee Stain Studios, and this week we teased something really juicy. If you haven't seen the teaser trailer we put out, then check the cards above, all right? It's a real quick video, so I recommend checking it out before continuing further with this one, because we're gonna talk about stuff about that. You know, in fact, you know what? I'll help you out. I'll hit that pause button for you real quick. Let's get into it. What is this machine we're seeing here? You know, what is its purpose? You know, what does it do? What materials will be needed to construct it? Will it blend? And how much does it weigh? So this machine is a designer that will aid you in creating blueprints. Since the launch of the game, people have requested blueprints in one form or another. We've always been sort of hesitant to add this to the game because a big part of Satisfactory is that you are the one constructing all these like massive factory layouts from a first-person perspective. You know, it's all about the accomplishment of knowing that you've painstakingly put all the pieces together to create your factories. And while it may seem that making building bigger easier adds a lot to the game, we also feel that it might take something out of it as well. I think a lot of people in our community have very different opinions and ideas as to how blueprints would work in Satisfactory. From our point of view, this isn't like a quality of life feature. It really affects how you approach construction in the overall game. So if we're to add any type of blueprinting functionality, it has to jive with like the overall design. Another aspect of this is the limitation of the engine itself. Satisfactory is built using Unreal Engine, and the engine uses a garbage collection system for memory that can only keep track of so many U-objects, Unreal objects, that make up for the memory blocks that all the game objects utilize. So if you've ever heard of the U-object limit, this essentially means that at some point you're not going to be able to build anymore, and by using blueprints, it's going to be easier to hit that limit. We're hoping that we can improve and optimize the game in this regard. This is something that we've actually been working on from day one, but we've come to terms with the fact that maybe we shouldn't completely limit the player because they might eventually hit a limit in the game. It's been tricky finding like a good balance for how blueprints should fit with the general game design, as well as from like a user experience perspective, you know, figuring out how to best accommodate the entire player base so that blueprints make sense and are easy to use for everyone. So let's talk about how blueprints will work in Satisfactory. So in order to create a blueprint, you first need to design it in the Blueprint Designer, which is a standalone building that allows you to create custom factory designs with maximum dimensions of 32 by 32 by 32 meters. You will not be able to take an existing part of your factory and slap that into a blueprint. They need to be designed for blueprint use beforehand. The reason why we limited blueprints in this manner is a combination of many things. From a user experience perspective, we think it makes it clear to define them and allows for an easier time applying them as well. And from a game design standpoint, we think it makes creating blueprints more interesting because you kind of need to solve both like how you set up your blueprints as well as how you apply them. So with the limited space in mind, it kind of creates these like obstruction games where part of the challenge of creating a blueprint is figuring out sort of how to make it work with a limited space, as well as how you can sort of puzzle multiple blueprints together. You know, you won't be able to create like an entire blueprint factory, like a blueprint that creates heavy modular frames or anything like that from the ground up, but you will be able to create modules or sections with other blueprints in mind where many parts can lead up into that factory. So the way we see it is that blueprints will sort of become like building blocks that you'll need to tailor to your playstyle, and we think this will significantly change how you approach setting up your factory layouts. All right, so let's jump into the game and I'll show you sort of how the Blueprint Designer will function. So here I'm on a test level right now. There's nothing much going on here, it's an empty level. Here is the Blueprint Designer. The model you see here, by the way, is not the same one that you're gonna see in game. This is a work in progress model. So yeah, I also have like a little bit of fake power hooked up here just so I can sort of demo this stuff. Anyways, so let's create a blueprint, shall we? So I'm gonna make a manifold blueprint because we all love making manifolds, right? It's the best part of the game. So I'm gonna be making a iron rod manifold, pretty basic, and I'll just show you sort of how that will work. So let's start by placing a constructor, and essentially everything you place on this like grid here within the blueprint designer, you know, is going to be part of the blueprints. Cool, and then I'm gonna hook up some mergers. I have to take note of the direction here. This is really important. And same deal here. I want to make sure that the splitters and the mergers all face the same direction. And there we go. Cool. And then we'll hook these up to the constructor. One thing that I'm going to make for this manifold is I'm going to be using Mark V belts for all the other belts that are feeding through the manifold. This is so that this manifold can be extended, so I don't need to know like what the maximum speed of the belts are, or that I need to upgrade them if I make, you know, if I want to chain this manifold along, essentially, in the blueprint. Let's place down a couple of power poles, because we do need power. Cool, and then we'll hook all of these up to each other. You don't have to care about like getting power into the blueprint at this stage. That's once you like apply it. So in the designer, you don't really care about that, but we do want to hook everything up within the blueprint. All right, so now everything is hooked up within the blueprint. Let's jump into the blueprint designer's interface and save it. So when you open the blueprint designer, it's going to look like this. It will show you the total cost of the entire blueprint as it is. If you have any like overclocking set on the constructors and you place like power thingies, if you do any overclocking within the blueprint and you use any power shards and like that, these will also show up in like within the cost of the blueprint and stuff like that. All right, so let's give it a name. I'm going to call it the Iron Rod Manifold. You can give it a description here. I'm going to type in a 2x4 constructor manifold, making 120 per minute iron rods. Short and sweet. All right. I'm going to set an icon for this blueprint. I'm going to use this one. This is for in the build menu. You can also change the color of like this pattern behind it. I'm going to just leave it as it is. And lastly, you can set the directory where this blueprint will show up. And we'll get into that a bit later, but I'll just show you it real quick here because I do need to set it. When you're in the build menu and you're picking which blueprint to build, you can sort of customize how that whole scheme shall look like. So here I've got like a couple of tabs here for different categories. And within these, I also have like subcategories that I can customize completely. I've already made a manifolds category here, but I do need to make a subcategory for that. So I'm gonna edit this. I'm gonna go to add subcategory. I'm gonna call this subcategory iron, because this is where I put all my iron related manifolds. And then this is where that blueprint will go. And then I'll apply changes and then close this and then save the blueprint. And there we go. So now my iron rod manifold making 100 iron rods per minute is saved to a blueprint. All right, so let's apply the blueprint in the world, shall we? So when you open up the build menu now, you'll see that there's another tab here called blueprints. And this is where all those blueprints reside that we just created with those categories and those subcategories, etc., etc. So let's try them out. So one thing I'm gonna do here first is I'm gonna place a bunch of foundation blocks here. It's good to like separate different blueprints between blueprints, because then you can like sort of puzzle and combine them in different ways. So what I've done here is I have a blueprint for just the foundation grid. So I'm gonna apply that, put that down here. Look at that. So we can quickly make a bunch of foundations. I'm gonna do that again. Really nice. And now let's apply the blueprint manifold that we just created. So I'm going to open here, go to manifolds, and I got the iron rod manifold. You can also put these on the hotbar, so I'm going to do that, place that there, and then I can place this wherever I want. So remember how I talked about like direction of the belts before? It's really key when you're making the manifold, when you're making the blueprint, that you keep track of this, because one issue currently with the current release is that you place a blueprint with one click. But if you want to make any changes to the blueprint, at the moment you have to sort of dismantle everything. So if you have like a very complex blueprint with a lot of stuff in it and you place it down and you realize you messed up, you're gonna have to dismantle all of that stuff. We're gonna look into seeing if we can figure out like a fix for that or workaround or something like that in the future. But for this first iteration, it is what it is. All right, so let's place the manifold. I think it's facing the right direction. And place this over here. And look at it go. Look at it go. I think the build effect is a bit too slow, but you get the point. Look at that. There's our manifold. Super cool. And it was just one click away. So I'm gonna hook up some power to it. Bam, all these constructors just booted up. I've got 2 storage containers here with ingots in them just for demo purposes. So I'm gonna feed those into the manifold. And just like that, you know, we've set up a manifold really quickly. And if you want to keep doing this and chain another one, I'm just going to press 5 over here. Make sure that the belts are lined up. We can hook all of these up and take the belts, hook those up, take these belts, hook them up, take these belts, hook them up. And we just went from 120 iron rods per minute to 240 iron rods per minute, just like that. It's pretty awesome, actually. Who would have thought? Cool, so now that I've done that, let's go back to the Blueprint Designer and make a couple of adjustments here. Because, you know, in the Blueprint Designer, you can hit clear here and it will clear out and you can make another blueprint. But let's load that blueprint up again. The manifold, iron manifold. Here we go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make an adjustment to this manifold. I'm going to create a iron plate manifold instead. And it's really simple to change this because all I really need to do now is go into each constructor here and change the recipe to iron plates. Copy and paste all those. So by just making this slight adjustment here, this is now producing 160 iron plates per minute. We can go back into the editing here and just replace this with iron plate manifold. And then making iron plates, and it's making 160 minutes. Change the icon to the plates, and just like that, we changed this to the iron plate manifold, and we now have. Wait. Okay, actually, I just realized what I did wrong. So I put the iron plate in the like undefined slot. So if I want to move this, all I need to do is go edit. And then move this into the manifolds. So now it shows up in the iron manifold list in the blueprint editor. So this is quite powerful. You know, you can create a lot of different types of modules and then mix them together to create like really awesome factory builds. If you have like any cosmetics that you want to utilize as well, if you have like some advanced like pillar, you know, setup that you have that you want to be able to like do over and over again, you can just create one in the Blueprint Designer and you just apply it everywhere. Since you are a bit limited with the Blueprint Designer, we are aware that like in certain cases it's kind of annoying to build stuff. And there's also one big caveat that I have to point out as well, and that is that some of the buildings won't fit in the Blueprint Designer. One honorable mention is the coal generator because it is a bit too tall. It's a tall boy. We are going to look into some of these cases. The coal generator, for instance, is something we do want you to be able to use in the Blueprint Designer. We're not 100% sure what solution we'll do there, if we change the model or if we just change the bounding box for it or something like that to make it work within the Blueprint Designer. But just so you guys are aware of that, we do know that. But like, not every building is going to be able to be used in the Blueprint Designer, so just bear that in mind. So one really cool thing with blueprints is that they are not persistent to your save file. So you're gonna be able to like use any blueprint on any save file, so long as you've unlocked like the cost that's within a blueprint. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to use it. And another cool thing is that we've separated so that blueprints are saved on file, separate from your save file. And they're located here within the same directory as your save files in a blueprint folder. So you're gonna be able to like take the blueprints that you created and just, you know, do whatever you want with them. Send them to your friend or keep them for yourself. Hide them, keep them secret. One key thing to take note of though is that the blueprint files are not stored in the same directory as your save files, which means that they're not going to be part of like the cloud syncing thing that's going on Steam and Epic. So your save file are cloud syncs, but your blueprints are not. So that's really important to remember. So that is how blueprints are going to function in the game. So with the addition of blueprints, I also have a little bit of an update on overclocking. One of the reasons why we've gone back and forth so much with overclocking is because the addition of blueprints kind of shifts the trade-off for overclocking. We were originally going to change so that like overclocking was going to be completely linear because we figured that blueprints would make overclocking kind of redundant. Count how many times I said overclocking. But one thing we realized is that blueprints might actually increase the value of space, which to this point has been like the only real trade-off is that you need more space because you need to build more. So the current thinking is that overclocking might become more valid, which sort of changes the whole trade-off discussion again. Currently though, we're leaning towards not making overclocking linear, but changing the exponent so it makes it like significantly lower. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll leave a link to the wiki article explaining all about this stuff with the overclocking, so you can see like the mathematical formula and like what the exponent is currently and how that it will affect the overclocking formula. So overclocking will be cheaper in update 7, and underclocking will give a little bit less savings there. But this will still be a test case. Linear is not out of the window yet. We still need a bit more data on the final decision, but first we want to try it out and sort of get your feedback on this and see if blueprints actually impact overclocking the way we think it will. Lastly, I want to leave you off with a little bit of a cool little quality of life feature that's also coming in this update, which is a sort of like a sprint mode for zip lines. So if you hold the sprint button while using zip lines now, you can build up a lot more speed, which is fun. And that was all I had for you today. Hopefully this stirs some ideas in your head as to how you want to set up your blueprints. And if you're brave enough and can't wait to get your hands on this, you're going to be able to try this out next week when the update drops on the experimental branch. If you want to learn more on how to access the experimental branch, then check the description. I'll leave some instructions there. And do not forget to back up your damn save files, okay? I'm just going to say this once. Don't make me tap the sign, all right? Cool. All right. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, take care.